Mouse Ears and Imagineers, the origin of Disneyland. Like many other amusement park visitors in the 1950s, a discontented guest sat on a bench in a deteriorating park and glumly observed the shabby, peeling paint and the time-worn rides. He had taken his daughters, Diane and Sharon, to the park for a fun day, but as he watched the broken-down rides and the ill-mannered antics of the pushy workers, his mind filled with disillusionment. Slowly, however, his disappointment transformed into a vivid image. He envisioned sparkling, clean attractions run by well-mannered guests. And what if simply rather than a clean, safe version of the standard amusement park, it focused on a specific theme? So, sitting there on the bench, that guest, Walt Disney, envisioned the future of the amusement park. It wasn't difficult for him to come up with a theme, since he had already given birth to a delightful cast of characters. They could jump off the drawing board and add the touch of fantasy the park would need. Mickey, Pluto, Donald, Goofy, and the rest had already won the hearts of Americans. The problem, as Walt found out all too soon, would be in convincing the needed financial backers that his dream could succeed. Walt soon cashed in an insurance policy to fund a field study of amusement parks around the nation and overseas. As he toured around the world looking at the existing parks, he gathered ideas for his own dream park. In 1952, he drew on his personal savings to hire a small group of designers to develop plans and models for the park. The Imagineers, as he named them, set to work helping him establish some basic standards for the park. It would need wide walkways so guests could leisurely stroll through the area, and there should be a huge custodial staff to make sure it was always spotless. There had to be plenty of food and entertainment, and there must be attractions that were unique to that park. As his Imagineers gradually built the park on paper and in clay models, Walt was becoming more and more anxious to build it in concrete and steel. He refused to even consider making any more pictures until he could get his new dream underway. Unfortunately, not everyone around Walt shared his enthusiasm for this new dream park, especially his brother and partner, Roy. Unlike Walt, with his obsessive belief in his new vision, Roy was extremely apprehensive. He felt they were doing fine as a film studio and shouldn't gamble on something unfamiliar. His fears even led him to circulate a false story in the business community that the banks were against the idea of the park. One by one, they all gave Walt's request for a loan a sympathetic but firm no. When Walt discovered the reason for their reactions, he became even more committed to the project. He refused to even talk to his brother, and they communicated solely through each other's secretaries or wives. Since it was becoming obvious that Roy would continue to hinder his attempts to commit Disney Studios' time and money to the project, Walt developed a separate company to take control of the affairs of his dream park, which he had now decided should bear the name of Disneyland. After some world-class wheeling and dealing, he eventually landed a contract with a newly organized television network, ABC, for a series about a masked Mexican bandit hero named Zorro. Both CBS and NBC told Walt they needed to see a film pilot before they would consider signing up for the potential series. Walt told them firmly that he didn't make pilots, and they would have to trust him on his film reputation. They were not interested in taking the gamble. One morning, though, Walt received a call from TV vice president named Kentner from ABC. "Walt, I hear you need money to build your fairground," he told him. Walt's immediate response was not exactly delight. "For God's sake," he blurted, "how many times do I have to tell people it's a leisure park, not a fairground?" Then when Walt found out Kintner worked for the newly formed ABC network, he was even less responsive. ABC was, in Walt's opinion, the Peanuts network. Walt explained that they were simply too new and too small to help him out. Unruffled, Kintner persevered. "Give us Mickey Mouse, Walt, plus the Disney name," he offered, "and I guarantee that within 2 years we'll be one of the big 3. Then, when Kintner offered $500,000 in cash and $4.5 million in a loan guarantee, Walt made the agreement on the spot. Now that Walt had his funding, there was no slowing his dream. As he and his Imagineers refined his visions, a fantasy world slowly began to take shape. By opening day, July 17th, 1955, he was ready to show the world his new brainchild. Well, he was sort of ready. Actually, as he proudly stood in front of 3 live television cameras, concrete was still being poured and the asphalt on some of the streets was still steaming. In fact, the grand opening of his dream park was not exactly the fantasy land he had hoped for. As ladies walked across the sections of newly poured asphalt, they left behind high-heeled shoes stuck in the road. Because of a plumber's strike, there were not enough water fountains, and thousands of grumbling guests were convinced that this was Walt's greedy plan to sell more soft drinks. The riverboat Mark Twain very nearly capsized during its overloaded maiden voyage, and to top it off, Fess Parker, Disney's popular Davy Crockett, made a highly publicized grand entrance just as the automatic sprinklers suddenly came to life and soaked him to the skin. Somehow, though, Walt and his Imagineers persevered. Throughout the following months, they constantly modified their ideas to fit reality. Walt, for example, had originally wanted to stock live animals throughout his jungle cruise. Zoologists, however, convinced him that the animals would likely sleep during most of the park's operating hours. As a concession, he used animated animals, but did rent several live alligators from an attraction near Knott's Berry Farm. He caged them in chicken wire pens near the Jungle Cruise entrance to impress the guests waiting in line. In a sense, Walt still got his wish to have live animals in the attraction because more than once one of the reptiles broke out of his pen and slinked into the attraction's lagoon. When this happened, the alligator farm's handler was summoned to lure his gator back into the cage. In the meantime, however, the divers who regularly needed to jump into the water to dislodge a boat that had become stuck on its track likely did so in record time. Once Walt had ironed out the problems with the sprinklers, the gators, and the rest, it was becoming clear that his new vision of the old amusement park was a winner. Within 6 months of the opening, over 1 million guests had entered his magic kingdom. Less than 10 years later, the 50 millionth visitor crossed through the gates. As Walt stood back, surveying the light-hearted crowd of fun-seekers who strolled through his dream, he likely reflected upon the pitfalls and obstacles he had to cross before completing it. Getting Americans to relax and enjoy themselves, he realized, is hard work.